Rafe Champion is an independent scholar trained in agricultural science, sociology, history and philosophy of science. Now, he's maintained long-term studies in philosophy, economics and cultural issues and has numerous academic publications and self-published books. Rafe has written a recent piece for the Spectator called The Leggless Green Energy Transition, where he talks about droughts. Well, wind droughts, which is brand new to me, by the way, amongst other things in this climate policy, chaos, shambles, whatever you want to do, or should we say a suicide note. First of all, Rafe, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Wind drought, I thought I heard it all, but tell me, and I was reading about it, and it actually makes a lot of sense, but no one talks about it, do they?
Well, there are three stories to be told about wind droughts. One is to explain why they absolutely prevent any transition to wind and solar. Oh, fuck. And the second is why the meteorologists didn't warn us. And the third is why the authorities didn't check before they spent billions on the impossible transition. So there's three stories there, but I guess today we're focusing on why wind power won't work.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued with this because if you have a drought, you have less water. If you have a flood, you have too much water. If you have no wind, it probably makes the turbines fairly ineffective unless we blow very hard on it. Do we have many wind droughts?
Every year or couple of years, there'll be a period of 1 or 2 or maybe even occasionally 3 days and nights with not enough wind to generate a significant amount of power. And when you're talking about windless nights, you've got no solar, you've got no wind as well. None. No renewable energy on windless nights. End of story.
So Chris Bowen pushing the wind turbines, if you look at the Great Dividing Range in Queensland, it's just desecration of the worst possible kind and plonking up all these windmills, as Donald Trump would call them. If there's no wind and we have no other backup, except for the ever-ready batteries at home in the torch, we're fairly well, people would say we're probably stuffed. Would that be about right?
Precisely correct. And that means we'll have to keep burning coal for decades until we've got nuclear.
I'm sorry, I just saw and heard Chris Bowen collapse on the ground when you mentioned that word, 4-letter word, by the way, coal.
Coal.
But, and you're very, very intelligent. Can you just tell me why governments are so stupid?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're under pressure from three different sources. There's the climate cult, where all the Greens are putting pressure on the politicians. There are the wind and solar industry that are bribing the politicians and funding the climate cult. And then you get the politicians who can make their way with votes from the cultists and financial assistance from the lobbies, if not while they're on the job, presumably when they retire and get lucrative board positions.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Can we predict wind droughts?
No. Oh, no, well, we know they'll come when there's a high pressure system. Mm-hmm. When there's a high pressure system, the winds will be low, and from time to time, the high pressure systems linger for up to 3 days over the whole of southeastern Australia. And that's when you get the most serious and widespread wind droughts.
I have to tell you, it's just incredible. Again, if someone could tell me why politicians are so stupid, I'd be much appreciated. You could just send us a note online, anybody. They're also obsessed, aren't they? Politicians are obsessed, and we have politicians being obsessed with batteries. In your humble opinion, sir, would you say they're a scam?
They are. The capacity of batteries is a factor of 100. They're 100 times too small to be useful. The only thing they're good for is stabilising into the fluctuations in the wind and solar from gusts of wind and clouds, which wouldn't be necessary if we didn't have wind and solar corrupting the system. The other use they have is to make money for people who charge them in the middle of the day when they get paid to charge, and then they discharge at the peak price in dinner time, uh, and they get paid at the top rate, having been already paid to charge. But that is a game that's not going to last too much longer, because the more batteries come in, the less profits they'll get out of that. But it does nothing to sustain the grid through the night.
So, but normally progress means that things get better. That's what progress does. You get better and better, and hopefully can enjoy life a little more, because that's what the brief abbreviation of progress is. But by progressing down the path, inverted commas, progressing with wind turbines and other renewable projects, what we're doing is we're placing our entire nation more or less a bit like the old Australian game, the two-up, heads you win, tails you lose. In this case, heads we lose and tails we lose, because if there's no wind, we have no industry, we have nothing. What do they say? I started with nothing and I'll end up with nothing when I pass away, but many people are going to be alive. So what do we do? How do we fix it? Because the batteries aren't cheap, they're farcical. I mean, it's again quite it's almost a fictitious argument from governments. What do we do? How do we fix it? In your opinion?
There's a fairly simple way to fix it. It means teaching everybody to become aware of wind droughts by simply looking at the appropriate site or widget on your phone or your computer. Look, check how much wind and solar are there at sunrise or breakfast time and sunset or dinner time. And you can go to different sites. There's the Android site and the NemWatch widget, and you look at a glance and see how much wind and solar are there. And if enough people just do that daily for a few weeks, they'll realise it's just not going to work. And then they can start putting real pressure on their local member and any candidates that come up for election, and they can say, what are you going to do about this? It's got to be a matter of widespread, overwhelming public opinion and public awareness of wind droughts. And we've been sending mail to a list of 100 journalists for 6 years, and none of those journalists have told the story. You tell me why the journalists aren't telling the story.
Well, because they're not journalists, and also if you go right back to probably to the start of time, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And government does provide, because of the advertising dollar is been stretched from all angles. You don't want to upset the one that's paying half your bills for you. So they're not going to do it. And also, I have to say, and I think you would agree, our education system has failed miserably, because we still believe that wind turbines and solar farms and witches and goblins are going to make our life better, and they're not going to do that.
Don't get me started on education. But I'll tell you, I think One Nation will tip the scales, because One Nation is the group that is going to be fearless and indomitable, telling people about what they need to know. And among the things they need to know is wind droughts. So a lot depends on them and any other good-hearted people and good journalists to get the word out, get people aware of wind droughts.
Incredible. Your article in the Spectator, the Leggless Green Energy Transition, first of all, a great title. Can you just expand on that for us?
Well, we can see that the attempt to make the transition to wind and solar is resting on three legs. The three legs are wind power, solar power, and batteries. Three legs. So the solar leg fails every night. The wind power leg fails during wind droughts, and it's catastrophic when there's a wind drought at night. And the battery leg is just pathetic because it, as I said, it's 100 times, the capacity of batteries is 100 times too small to be helpful to get through a windless night. Pretty simple, really.
It is. It's very simple indeed. If somebody wanted to read your article, read the Leggless, I love the title. I think it's magnificent. I think a good title is a sort of a hook to get you interested. The Leggless Green Energy Transmission. It's in the Spectator.
You better subscribe to the Spectator, hadn't you?
Indeed, we must. I think it's Rowan Dean. We've got to keep him happy.
Well, it's Alexandra Marshall who edits my material.
She wouldn't have to do much, and she'd be petrified, wouldn't she?
No, she improves it. No, she's a good editor.
Yes, actually, she's very good. We're not going to tell her otherwise. You might. I'm not going to do it. Look, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. I think this is just fantastic. I'd like you to come back on again in the near future because I think there are many other things we could talk about without being arrested. So if you are interested, sir, would you come back on?
Oh, look, I love it. I love to get the exposure. I like to get the feeling of reaching out and getting to people in the way that you don't when you write. I can talk to you, I get the sense I'm talking to someone. I can imagine lots of, dozens of other people tuning in. Mm-hmm. So it's a great lift to me.
Thank you so much. As they would say, Rafe, you're a champion. Thank you, sir, for your time. This is the Country Telegraph.